We're learning new details tonight about Sun Prairie's independent investigation.
It comes after the former dean of students was accused of having an inappropriate relationship with a student and having child pornography.
WMTV's Cameron Kelly went through that 23-page document the district released tonight. Cameron, what did you learn?
Mark McKenzie, the investigation was handled by a law firm in Milwaukee. The report found poor investigative practices, a failure to recognize Title IX obligations, and communication breakdowns. Findings of a 23-page independent investigation were released, sharing how Sun Prairie School District handled allegations of sexual misconduct. This follows the June 2025 arrest of Robert Gilkey-Meisegeier. He faces over a dozen charges, including child sexual exploitation, and he was also indicted on federal child pornography charges. The report details who was interviewed and what happened from the moment rumors started at the district in 2023 about Gilkey-Meisegeier. The allegations escalated when an anonymous tip about alleged grooming and retaliation was sent to the district in April 2025. Bridget Katarek, director of student policy and school operations, was one of the first people to learn about that tip. She passed the information to human resources and principal Jennifer Pluger. The independent lawyer said in the report that Pluger and Katarek were both in the best positions to have properly investigated the accusations against Gilkey-Meisegeier. The conclusion says, quote, school level and district level administrators failed to recognize Title IX obligations, which I believe resulted in insufficient investigations into serious allegations. Investigative practices were poor, with limited interviews, lack of documentation, and an HR-centric approach that was not primarily focused on the students involved. According to the school board, the two will not be returning to their roles. Peg Shoemaker will continue to serve as interim principal at Sun Prairie West High School until further notice. The district will start the search for a principal this spring. Live in studio, Cameron Kelly, WMTV 15 News.
Cameron, thank you. The report also stated that Superintendent Dr. Brad Sarin was unaware of Gilkey-Meisegeier's allegations until a virtual meeting in June of 2025. This comes as Dr. Sarin was recently chosen to lead the Chippewa Falls Area Unified School District starting next school year. Sarin has faced criticism after criminal charges against Sun Prairie staff, changes in school leadership, and contentious board meetings. Back in October, the Sun Prairie School Board voted Sarin's operations reports were not compliant because of a lack of transparency between parents and the